Meeting to order. I guess I will call the meeting of the DPW, the Public Works Committee to order at 6:47. And with that, I will immediately hand it off to Leanne to go through our 3 orders of business tonight, starting with consider automated metering infrastructure opt-out policy.
Okay. I'm trying to refresh my own memory here. As noted in the memo, we did about a year ago go through this with the then Public Works Committee, none of which are you. So, and they did make a motion to approve and forward to the village board. It was scheduled on the village board meeting that the agenda completely turned over due to the emergency declaration. So we never got that far. So thought it was a good idea to bring it back and make sure that everyone understands the policy and confirm the motion or recommendation that was made at the time. So the automated metering infrastructure program that we are going to be installing uses radio frequency to transmit the readings from a transmission unit, which is connected, is a very small device that's connected to the water meter. And then that bounces off potentially a series of towers and back to the village's primary data collection units. And that is how the consumption data is downloaded. The reason that the village went to that is the newest and most cutting edge technology, not so cutting edge that it hasn't been tested, but you know, I would give you an analogy of, I really can't even think of one, but it will allow us to provide better customer service. It's definitely going to improve our operational efficiencies. Right now, when we read meters, a utility staff member has to actually walk to every single water meter data unit and actually touch a touchpad with a handheld reader. Those touchpads then collect the data, and at the end of each day or period of time, the employees have to go to a station at the village hall in the finance office where the billing is done, and all that data has to be downloaded off those handheld readers. That technology is actually so out of date that they don't even make replacements for the handhelds that we currently have. So, you know, we're with this move, we will enter the 21st century of data collection for water meters. The Public Service Commission considers the AMI to be standard equipment, and therefore, if the village were to allow people to have alternate data collection systems at their home, the village has to have a policy that outlines that process for opting out of the use of the AMI meters. So your packet, the memo in your packet includes 2 options for a potential opt-out policy. You could also, as noted as you get a little further into the memo, there are communities that do not allow an opt-out policy. They assume the AMI, the data, the radio frequency transmission of data to be the standard, and they don't allow for variations. We're presenting these to you for your consideration, but you do not need to pick one. You could pick neither. The first is to allow the meter transmission unit, which is the device I mentioned earlier that is connected to the water meter and actually pulls the consumption data off the meter. That is typically mounted in the building within the floor joists in the basement, usually. We would allow that unit, which is called an MTU, to be installed on the exterior of the house. If people had concerns with having that unit inside, this would be an alternative to that. There is a one-time $45 fee that would be borne by the property owner if they if this option were approved by the village board and the property owner so selected. That is a pass-through to Vanguard Utility Services, and they are the contracted installation vendor that we have in this project. So that would just be a pass-through fee that would not be revenue to the village. The second option that you may consider would be a no meter transmission unit on the property. If that were the case, the meters would have to be manually read, very similar to the process that we use now, but with different updated equipment. It's assumed that if this policy were available to people, it would be a relatively small percentage of them. But nonetheless, that does have some impact on the projected efficiencies that we were looking at through the implementation of an AMI system. Certainly, we wouldn't be reading 3,300 customers, but any, excuse me, on call tonight. Any, any amount of manual reads does make some changes to how we would go about with the scheduling of work and those meter reads. So if the board approved that and a property owner selected that option, there would be a one-time charge of $161.57, and that would be for the installation of a different reader at the home. And then the property would also be subject to an ongoing quarterly manual reading fee of currently $22.41. All of the amounts that I've referenced are included in the village's construction authorization from the Public Service Commission. So PSC sets those rates. The ongoing reading fee would be adjusted. My presumption is each time the village has any type of a rate increase, that fee would also be adjusted. So just as a refresher, last year about this time, the Public Works Committee did approve what's listed in your memo as option 1 as an opt-out policy, allowing a resident or property owner to choose to have the transmission unit installed on the exterior of the building. That would not require a staff person to enter the property to read. Those readings would be issued through the radio frequency.
So,
oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, quick question. I mean, maybe this is very basic, but I just want to make sure I understand. Why allow an opt-out at all? This doesn't seem like it would be very intrusive, and it seems like this is the standard, and other municipalities aren't necessarily allowing opt-out. So why would somebody ask us for an opt-out here? And
Sure.
Maybe it's easily apparent, I'm just not seeing it, but I'm curious.
There are some individuals in Wisconsin and other areas that have had or have some concerns with the radio frequencies.
Okay.
We have an opinion from the North Shore Health Department, and that is posted on our project webpage. They have no concerns with the use of radio frequency for this purpose. But it may be that there may still be some individuals who have concerns about that and would prefer not to have that in their home. As a point of reference, the actual the impact of that is actually less than the use of a microwave or a cell phone. So it's minimal, but it does exist, and then that is of concern to some people.
Trustee Stokebrand?
And so it's always quote unquote on. Does it need a power source?
Yes, they have internal batteries. Those batteries have a warranted life of 10 years, which, right, Joel, it's 10. And that lines up with the testing requirements that PSC has on the meters. So it's kind of a I don't want to say one-stop shop, but At the point that those batteries would need to be replaced, you would likely need to get at the meter to do a test under current PSC requirements.
For calibration or whatever, just to make sure.
Correct.
So if we were to stick with a recommendation from a year ago and allow option one, do you have any kind of ballpark on how many people we think would opt out and take this option? And I mean, correspondingly, any kind of, what would the impact be on the, I guess there wouldn't be too much of an impact on efficiency, right? Because they can still read it going by. It's just
That is
efficient.
correct. So on option one, it really would have no impact whatsoever on our operations. It would still be read through the same way that it would be if it were located within the building. We would not need to manually do that. The second option would have the greater impact on our operations.
Got it. I mean, I guess, not to, just from my point of view, I think option one, I guess I'm okay with doing this, what we did a year ago, and sticking with option one if people don't want the radio frequency within their house. I mean, it's a pass-through charge. It doesn't impact village efficiency, and if it makes people feel more comfortable, I'm okay with that recommendation. So that's what it looks like to me. Trustee Stokerbrand?
I would concur. And I just want to see though, what efficiencies do we see? And did you say we have 3,300 customers? These are all residential, right?
No, that is all customers. So it's approximately 3,300 and change. But that would include institutional, residential, and commercial customers.
And so like a duplex would likely have two.
Typically not. Most duplexes in Shorewood have one water line and one sewer line.
Okay.
There are some who have two, but by and large, no.
And so like an apartment, like let's say the Mosaic, what's the water use there? Does each unit have its own?
Mosaic is, remind me, please.
It's right near Mosaic.
Oh, I believe that just has one meter. Most buildings will only have one. Occasionally, if there is a duplex that's converted to a condominium, they will put in a second line. Occasionally, owners of duplexes will have a second line added just for billing reasons.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm inclined to stick with the recommendation from a year ago. I just wonder, in terms of staff time, what will we monetarily as a village change in terms, if we just go with option one, let's say if 3,300 customers, let's say 10%, 300 people decide, I think that'd be an outlier though, wouldn't it? Don't you think it'd be much less than 300? It's going to be a very small number of people, I'm guessing and hoping, that would choose for the option one small impact choice. What will be the difference we could expect budgetarily with staff time that you would need for the water utility?
There would be little to no budget impact. Really what would happen is it would free up more time for our staff to focus on maintenance activities. Related to the water utility, we've been making strides in recent years to do a much better job of consistently exercising valves and doing other maintenance within the system. And this would definitely allow more time for those types of exercises, but it would not have a budgetary impact.
Okay, so do you, in terms of workload, do you see this as like 0.25 of an FTE or something like that?
No, I don't think it would.
How do you determine staff-wise, how will this affect your department?
So it's approximately 2 staff people, not quite 2 weeks, 4 times a year.
Okay, that's good. Okay, I'm prepared to make a motion, or would you like a motion?
Actually, there is a recommended motion in your memo, and if you would, I think we'd appreciate having just that on the record.
And the one that's suggested is the option one, correct?
Correct.
2020.
That is correct.
Is the chair ready for a motion?
Yep, if you got it.
Okay, I recommend approval of the alternate AMI water meter installation policy, which provides for an option to install the meter transmission unit MTU on the exterior of a residence at a cost to be borne by the requesting property owner.
I'll second.
Second.
So we have a motion by trustee Stokebrand, second by trustee Bockhorst. Any further discussion?
I just think this will be great to have this in our rearview mirror. I mean,
Agreed.
you were all ready to go last year, and then it was panic, chaos, disorder, and a serious pandemic. And it's just be nice to see that. I know it only starts in August, so it's really a long ways out, but
Oh, that'll be here
yeah,
probably sooner than we'd like.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So I agree. And any further, if there's no further discussion, I think we're ready to get this process moving. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 3-0.
Okay, the second item on your agenda is actually an attachment included to the memo related to the AMI installation policy. And what we wanted to do tonight with you, and we'll also be doing with the village board at the second April meeting, is just to review the disconnection process that is outlined by the Public Service Commission. And the reason for that is, excuse me, is that if we have residents who do not respond to our repeated requests to enter their home to change the water meter, the Public Service Commission outlines a disconnection process. So it's a fairly lengthy process, but we did want to make sure that everybody understands that and has, an opportunity to take a look at it and ask any questions. I won't speak for Joel. I am not an expert in water service disconnection, nor am I an expert on PSC regulations, but I think for the purposes of tonight, Joel and I should be able to answer questions that you have. So the handout in your packet looks like, it doesn't look like, it is a flow chart like this. And so the process prior to August a resident or property owner will receive a request by US mail for access to the water meter. There will be multiple options for appointments, including weekends and evening hours. So the first appointment request will come via mail, and the resident or property owner will be asked to either call a number to select an appointment time, or they can also do that appointment online. If they respond to that, we schedule an appointment and replace the meter. If they do not respond, when Vanguard employees are in the area, they will leave a door hanger, just reminding people that we're looking for them to schedule an appointment. If we don't get any response from the door hanger, then a second appointment request is sent via US mail. Process repeats. If we don't get a response and they're in the area, they will leave another door hanger. And that would go to a third appointment request, also via US mail. If at any point during this, they schedule an appointment, we get in there, we replace the water heater, we clear them off the books. If after the third appointment request, they do not respond to Vanguard's request for scheduling, that account is turned back to the village. It's called RTU. That means it's returned to the utility. At that point, under PSC guidelines, we would send via certified mail a disconnection of service notice that gives the account holder 10 days to respond and schedule an appointment. If they do that, we schedule the appointment, we change the meter, we clear them off the books. After 5 days, if we have not had a response from them, the house is posted, so there's a door hanger that is left. At that point, we also notify, there would be a notification of the village board, the village manager, North Shore Health Department, North Shore Fire Department, and Shorewood's Building Inspection Department. If after those 5 days elapse and we do not have any contact with the resident, we would disconnect the water service on the 10th day after that first 10-day disconnection notice was sent via certified mail. This process is actually the same as what would happen due to non-payment for service. I will tell you that in all the time that I have worked at DPW, I've sent one 10-day disconnection notice and turned off no water. Normally that gets people's attention. If it doesn't, I remember my predecessor telling me that if you do ever go to disconnect someone's water service, take as many vehicles as you can, make sure they all have their emergency lights on and their strobes on, get people's attention. So we take every opportunity to get people's attention. If we don't want to turn off the water, nobody wants that. It becomes a process for everyone involved. I would note, and it is not on this particular illustration, that we would not ever disconnect water service near the close of business or on a Friday afternoon. We would always make every effort, if we get to the point of having to disconnect water service, it would be done relatively early in the morning, so that if that was necessary to get someone's attention, we would have ample opportunity to restore service prior to the end of the business day.
Quick question. So when we disconnect water service, do we disconnect water service, replace the meter and turn it back on? Or is this a disconnection until you schedule an appointment to have it replaced? I guess.
Well, we would turn off the water without entering the home. If at that point they said, no, don't turn off my water, come replace the meter, we would do that.
Got it.
But they would have to allow us access to the home in order to replace the meter. In most cases, there are a handful of homes on Lake Drive that have their water meters outside of the home, but the vast majority are located inside the home.
Got it. Trustee Stuckelbrand, I think you had your hand up before, so.
My question, so if August 2 is the anticipated start date, I'm sorry if I missed it. How soon do you think, if things go well, what's your estimated date of completion?
I don't, that is different.
I guess my point is, will snowbirds be gone? But if they're already getting, your mailings are going to start in July, right? Probably.
Correct. Yes.
So they'll
definitely
have plenty of notice if someone's a
right.
snowbird.
Right. Yep. And in every case, if someone has a legitimate concern or issue, we would certainly work with them. The actual property owner does not have to be home. They do have to have someone who is of legal age available to provide access to the house. So that, that could be a neighbor, a family member, anyone else.
Okay. And just to follow up, so I'm not a big fan, but for those that are really into technology, is there a YouTube video that says, here's what happens when Vanguard comes into your house to do your water meter upgrade?
There is not yet, but it is in the works.
All right. There are people, yeah, excellent. Okay, and I think, among the FAQs you want to include the one about the batteries. We'll be in your house now. We'll probably be in your house again in 10 years to recalibrate, check the device, and change your batteries. I think that might be, just trying to fend off some questions ahead of time. That sounds great.
So Leanne, sorry, Trustee Bachhorst, do you have anything? Hearing none. Leanne, do you need anything from us on this, or is this more of an update?
This is really provided for information purposes. This process is laid out in PSC 185. So this is the process. We just, as I said, wanted to make sure people had the opportunity to understand it and ask questions. We will also be running through this with the full village board at the second April meeting.
And I'm sorry, did you say what's your best case scenario for having these?
Oh, I dodged that question, didn't I? We've asked Vanguard that question. In fact, I don't know if we asked today. I would expect Vanguard, and this is just me, they haven't really given us this. I would expect them to be in town at least through the holidays. Perhaps, bleeding into the first couple of months of the new year.
Wow.
There will likely be a fair number, given the age of our system and the age of the homes involved, of what we would call return to utilities because of either some sort of interesting plumbing configuration, an inability to turn off the water, inability to get, access to a meter if someone has drywalled over it and finished their basement. So things like that will get tossed back to the village. And I would expect, it's certainly within the realm of possibility that we're doing, I'm going to call it cleanup at well into 2022, perhaps even toward the end of 2022.
Wow.
So this is going to be on the utility plate for quite some time. Vanguard will do their thing. They'll come in and they'll get out. But, we're going to have a list of things that need attention.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Really, apologies. I'm trying to eat dinner at the same time I'm running a meeting. Probably not the greatest idea, but thanks for bearing with me. Any further questions on this item, or shall we move on to the last item on our agenda? Okay, seeing none, let's, Leanne, I will again stay with you for the last item on the agenda, which is electrician recruitment.
Yeah, an update on the electrician recruitment process. So at the direction of the Public Works Committee, we did post that position. We had a small handful of applicants, one of which looked very promising. We did have a couple of conversations with him, and ultimately he declined the offer, the conditional offer. The pay range that the approved pay range that we have, there's a pretty significant gap between the top of that range and the market for a licensed electrician. And we had some conversations with him about the benefits, WRS system, steady, 40-hour weeks, possibilities of overtime. But in the end, some of the benefits of the position were not enough to close that gap for him financially. And he declined the offer. Joel has been doing some work with outdoor electrical contractors to get some time and material rates so that we have the opportunity to cover after the electrician's retirement. And he's announced that retirement his last date on the payroll will be, I believe, June 10th. However, accrued vacation will back that into likely the end of May. Joel, do you want to say anything about some of the types of services that you've requested price quotes for?
Sure. Ultimately, I reached out to a couple of contractors that we have worked with in the past on different various projects, and number one, trying to see if they would be even interested in providing us a hand more on a interim type of basis, to kind of carry us through the process of us being able to get somebody on board. And the good news is that these two of them so far have expressed interest in helping us out. The hourly rates that they're providing are quite a bit higher than, I guess, what I was hoping for. Depending on the work, the type of work, such as changing a light bulb or fixing an underground fault, or responding to an emergency for a vehicle accident into a traffic signal pole, something to that nature. And the two electricians that I've been working with, their rates are in the $120 to $140 an hour range for these services. So, keeping that in mind, if we end up going that route, we would want to be wise and good caretakers of the budget when it comes to responding to street lights that are out, because it will get very expensive if I call them into town for one street light that is out. So I think we're going to have to come up with a system that we call them when we have a bunch of work for them to accomplish, because it could get rather expensive rather quick. But like I said, the good news is there are a couple of them that are willing to do the work for us.
Trustee Stokebrand?
And so you still think that, well, I guess based upon our direction, right, we had directed you that we'd still wanted to try to do this in-house, right? And so that's why you're pursuing the electrician replacement. But you see this as maybe a 6-month Band-Aid, and then if we can, would you be looking for direction? Should we try to beef up the payment or the benefits package? If we still want to keep it in-house, I guess those are two separate issues.
Yeah. We will
I think we
continue.
kind of need to know how much time we want to give you to see if we can get this in-house, how high we have to go with the numbers for the benefits and the wages. Is it worth, well, I don't know, to try to do this now for 6 months going into summer? Is this, like, I always think this kind of work in terms of a little bit of the seasonal difference, right? But is there really not a seasonal thing? Like let's say we get to a contract with company A to do this work for us for 6 months, and we do it from June through the end of the year. Could we expect that the number that we see, barring emergencies, would be the same number we'd see for 6 months from December through May? You know what I'm saying? If we're trying to will we be looking at apples and apples? If we do this temporary fix through the end of the year, we see what it costs, we look what our benefits and payment package was, could we make an informed decision, in 6 months about what's the wiser choice for us financially, to keep it in-house like we had hoped, or to go with this outsourcing?
Joel can definitely chime in here too. My gut would be a June to December would probably be, you'd probably have less hours than you would a December to June, simply because the majority of the issues that we find with underground faults in the system occur during the freeze-thaw cycles. So like
seasonality is a significant factor for trying to figure out if this is the way to go.
Significant. I think that depends on the year, but definitely a factor. Yeah. Joel?
Yeah, I guess I would tend to agree with that. I mean, spring, this time of the year seems to bring out the worst of our system, just because of the wet conditions. So, middle of summer when it's dry, we see quite a few less of those kind of issues. Really can't, speak for, emergency type situations where, you never know when someone veers off the road and hits a light pole, right? So, that's kind of an unknown, but, I think if you look at the most time consuming type of repairs, those being trying to locate underground problems and then digging them up and fixing them. Spring clearly is the time where we see most of that work.
And do you think that, I guess I'm looking for some numbers on, it's hard to make a financial decision without numbers. We can't predict how much we'll use them unless, well, based on your metrics for performances, in those departments. Do you need direction on what we need if we can recruit? It sounds like the pool wasn't too big, but if the numbers were different, if we had a 5% increase on one side of the package or another or both, would we have more candidates or?
I think that could certainly hurt. Couldn't hurt. Excuse me. The candidate that we did speak to did say that he would not, he could not consider an offer that was under $35 an hour. That's a fair amount higher than anyone currently makes. So, we're really
looking. You say currently makes, like in our
any
department?
Any of our hourly employees, including the foreman.
And what does the foreman make?
Off the top of my head, I apologize. I don't.
Okay.
31.
Oh, wow. So that may have been a bargaining position, but still.
Well, if his, if the resume was accurate, he was making in the mid 40s hourly wage, like $45 per hour. So, that is not something that, we can currently compete with.
So this would that kind of wage would sort of blow our scale out of the water.
It would most definitely blow our, yep, yeah.
So in other words, it'd be a domino effect for everyone if we did it as a one-off.
Yeah, it becomes a very large and probably difficult conversation.
So I guess for this, is it just presented as an update as, here's what's happening and we're continuing to pursue.
Right, that is correct. I think at some point, or at the point that we come back and have another conversation, I would guess that would likely be a Tyler conversation, because at that point, then I think we're talking, then that conversation has elements of compensation and benefits. So that probably would involve or be led by Tyler. So this is just on committee tonight. I think Joel and I will regroup with Rebecca, and at some point in the very near future, it may be the April meeting, it may be the early May meeting, unless we have additional applicants, then I think we would have to go the route of interim contract maintenance.
Got it. And Trustee Backhorst, I think I saw your hand up.
Yep, thank you. Thanks, Leanne, for the presentation, and thanks, guys, for all the great questions. Yeah, we're seeing this shortage across the state. As part of the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, a lot of the really qualified trade fields are getting much more at the in the private sector. So as Leanne mentioned, the whole benefits package and everything else that, usually in probably pre-Walker days would have been a bigger attractor. But with so many aspects of political uncertainty and the constant war on public employees, it's not surprising that that wouldn't be enough to compensate for what one could get and hope for the better things on the private market regarding healthcare. and other fringe. So anyway, thanks, Leanne, for all this. It's unfortunate that this is this difficult, but really appreciate the hard work and keep my fingers crossed. But I think we can do a
Yeah.
little bit more in this Public Works Committee besides just keeping our fingers crossed. So this is a bigger policy discussion that I'd like to see leadership in, in this committee, and we could bring this to the full board perhaps another time with a bigger discussion.
Trustee Bachhorst, trustee Stokebrand.
So Leanne, what's sort of standard operating procedure for a situation like this? These companies that you're looking at that are asking 120 to 140 an hour, is it common to contract with them for 6 months or 9 months or per month, or do they need a year commitment? What's typical and what for us to ask for?
I don't know that we have a typical. I mean, this is new territory for all of us. I did not speak with any of these. Joel has been the point person on all of the contractor conversations. So I don't, Joel, did you have any conversation about term?
No, and I think it was my goal ultimately was to, try to get some interested parties that would assist us through the process until we got somebody hired, utilizing, a T&M type of rate. I think long-term, if, we believe we are not going to be able to hire an electrician, which is kind of the way it looks at this point. The proper thing to do would be to put out an RFP with specific requirements from the village's end so that they know what they're competing on or bidding on. I would think, just off the top of my head, I would think that you probably wouldn't get a whole lot of interest if you do anything less than a year. I think that would be, I haven't had conversations with them about that, but I don't think there would be a lot of interest to go through that process and, for a 6-month period. So I would think a minimum of a year time would be appropriate. And if I had to, if I guess I had my choice and we were gonna go down that road, I would do like a 3-year type of commitment. That way, you'd probably get a better price.
Okay, and weren't there other communities that were doing this too with their lighting?
The only one that I am aware of is the city of Glendale, and I've had some conversations with their public works director. Theirs seems to be fairly informal. They don't have a written contract. From what I was able to glean, I didn't get any written specifications. Now, keep in mind that their system is very different than ours in the areas of Glendale that have streetlights. They're in the newer section. So I believe that their entire system is in conduit. So they don't get the number of faults that we do. Typically, their issues are knockdowns or just bulb or ballast burns out. So, I didn't quite get the apple to apple conversation I was hoping for there.
Okay.
I've not found any other areas that contract, but we're continuing to try that, see what we can find out.
Okay, thank you.
It sounds like there's more to come on this, and I'm conscious of the fact that we're now moving into village board time, so I want to move us. Unfortunately, I think we'll have to come back to this and discuss further in the upcoming weeks and months. But I also don't want to get too far into board time. Trustee Stokebrand?
You want a motion to adjourn? Do you need one?
I guess, please.
I'll give you one if you need one.
I need one.
You have I move to adjourn.
I'll
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you,
Aye.
staff. Leanne. and
Aye.
Joel.
Aye. Thanks, Leanne. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. See you at the other.
See you on the other side.